The late summer sun cast long golden shadows on the quiet street, its warmth stretching lazily across the sidewalks. It should have been an ordinary day, one of those peaceful moments when life slows down just enough for people to breathe. But that peace was shattered by the sharp screech of tires, followed by the unmistakable crack of gunfire. And just like that, a man's life changed forever. Special Agent Elijah Brooks wasn't supposed to be there. He was off duty, heading home after visiting his mother at the retirement home across town. A man of few words, Elijah lived quietly, worked diligently, and kept his badge tucked away unless duty called. He'd spent 12 years with the FBI, handling complex federal cases, often behind the scenes. But to the small neighborhood where he grew up, he was simply Eli, the quiet, respectful kid who used to help elderly neighbors carry groceries and always made time to greet people with a nod and a smile. That evening, he was dressed in a plain, gray hoodie and jeans, blending into the crowd as he stopped by a gas station on the corner. He wanted to grab a cold drink before the long drive home. The sun was beginning to dip, and the air was thick with summer heat. It was the kind of evening when folks leaned against their car hoods, chatting, laughing, just living. No one expected. Trouble, not there. Then came the police cruiser. No sirens, no announcements. Just the slow, creeping pull-in as two uniformed officers stepped out. One tense and silent, the other visibly agitated. From across the street, a group of teens noticed the sudden change in atmosphere. The laughter died down. Eyes turned. Elijah barely looked up from his phone as he stood at the vending machine, completely unaware of the sudden tension building around him. "Hey, you there. Step away from the machine. Hands where we can see them," barked one of the officers, confused. Elijah turned, startled. "Excuse me?" he asked, brows furrowed. He didn't make a move, didn't resist. He just tried to understand what was going on. But the officers had already made up their minds. To them, he wasn't Elijah Brooks, FBI agent. He was just another black man in a hoodie, standing alone at dusk near a gas station. One officer reached for his weapon, yelling louder, "I said hands up, now!" Elijah calmly raised his hands, keeping his voice low. "I'm federal law enforcement. I have my badge. Let me show you." But the next moment exploded in chaos. A flash. A bang. The ground rushed up to meet him as his body hit the pavement. Gasps, screams. Someone ran inside to call 911. Another person crouched behind a car, filming everything on their phone. But most just froze, horrified. Elijah lay bleeding, his breath shallow, his eyes wide in disbelief. He had tried to speak, tried to say he was one of them, that he had credentials, that this was all a mistake. But no one listened. Not until it was too late. The video spread like wildfire online. Within hours, it was on every news channel. The man who had been gunned down wasn't a suspect. He wasn't armed. He wasn't resisting. He was an FBI agent, wrongly targeted because of how he looked and where he was standing. It shook the nation. The officers' department scrambled for answers. Press conferences followed, filled with half-formed excuses and rehearsed regret. But the people weren't buying it, especially not when Elijah's credentials, still zipped inside his jacket, were discovered only after he was taken to the hospital. He survived, but barely. The bullet had punctured a lung and fractured a rib. Recovery would be slow and painful. But what haunted Elijah more than the physical pain was the memory, how quickly it all happened, how little his identity mattered when judgment was already passed based on his skin color and clothes. But this story isn't just about a mistake. It's about accountability. Because this time, justice didn't tiptoe around apologies. This time, the officer who pulled the trigger faced a courtroom, and an extremely harsh sentence. It shocked everyone. Never before had such a fast and unforgiving verdict been handed down in a case like this. People began to ask, was the system finally changing? Or was it the public pressure that forced the hand of justice? Either way, the officer's downfall was as swift as it was severe. Yet amidst the media frenzy and court drama, another story quietly unfolded, one that didn't make as many headlines but touched hearts just as deeply. It happened just a week before Elijah's shooting. on a crowded city bus, the kind of place where strangers sit shoulder to shoulder, barely making eye contact. But something small, something human happened there that would ripple far beyond what anyone expected. A tired, visibly pregnant white woman boarded the bus, her face drawn from the heat and the long day. Most passengers pretended not to notice. Some even shifted to make it look like they didn't have room beside them. But a black teenager, maybe 17 or 18, stood up without hesitation. "Ma'am, you can take my seat," he said quietly. His voice respectful and calm. She looked surprised, maybe even suspicious at first. But something about the boy's sincerity softened her face. She took the seat with a grateful nod, murmuring a breathless thank you. The ride continued, uneventful. But as the bus neared her stop, the woman turned to the boy and handed him a small folded note. "Please read this later," she said, almost whispering. "I mean it." He tucked it in his pocket, confused. He didn't think about it again until he got home. When he unfolded the paper, his hands trembled. The words inside changed everything. It wasn't just a thank you. It was something else entirely. Something that would connect him to a future he never expected. And what no one knew, not yet, was that the woman had a powerful secret. One that would bring her face to face with Elijah Brooks just weeks after his shooting. One that would spark a chain of events leading to unexpected alliances, shocking truths, and a reckoning that reached far beyond a courtroom. Because sometimes, change starts not with anger or loud protests, but with a seat offered, in silence, and a note that carried the weight of a lifetime. And as for that officer, the one who shot Elijah and expected the system to protect him, he didn't see it coming. The truth, the backlash, the sentence that would follow. But the story isn't over yet, not by a long shot, because the note was only the beginning. The boy's name was Marcus, 17, lanky, quiet, the kind of teen who kept his hoodie up and his head down, not because he had anything to hide, but because life had taught him early on that being invisible was sometimes safer. He lived with his grandmother, Miss Etta, in a 2-bedroom apartment tucked into the back of an aging complex where streetlights flickered and sirens sang almost every night. Marcus was no stranger to hardship. His father had been locked up when he was 8. His mother drifted in and out of their lives like wind through cracked windows. Sometimes there, sometimes not. But Miss Etta, she was his rock. A retired schoolteacher, with a sharp tongue and a softer heart, she raised Marcus with love and firm hands. She taught him about dignity, how to walk with pride even when life tried to shrink you. And above all, she taught him never to turn away from someone in need. That's why giving up his seat that day on the bus didn't feel like a big deal to him. It was automatic, second nature. But now, days later, as he held that folded note in his trembling fingers, he realized something strange was happening. He had read it over and over, trying to make sense of the words written in elegant, slightly shaky cursive. "You reminded me that good still exists. I lost faith, but your simple kindness gave it back. If you're reading this, go to 402 East Redwood Avenue tomorrow at 3 p.m. Knock twice, wait 5 seconds, then knock once more. Don't be late." A friend. At first, Marcus thought it might be a joke. Some prank or weird message meant for someone else, but the paper had his name written on the back. And not just Marcus, his full name, Marcus Elijah Green. Very few people knew his middle name. Fewer still spelled Elijah right. The next day, curiosity got the best of him. Against his better judgment and Miss Etta's warnings, he left the house early and made his way across town. The address was in a different part of the city, cleaner, quieter, lined with manicured bushes and tall trees. It felt like a different world entirely, the kind of place where doors were solid wood and mailboxes didn't lean sideways. He stood in front of a narrow townhouse with ivy creeping up one side and a brass number plate that gleamed in the sun. He checked the time. 2:59 p.m. Knock, knock. Waited knock. The door opened. A woman stood there, the same one from the bus, though now she looked different. Not tired, not strained, composed. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a low bun, and she wore a sharp blue blazer that looked expensive. She smiled, not warmly, but not coldly either. "Marcus," she said simply. "Right on time. Come in." He hesitated. I'm sorry, why am I here?" "You'll understand," she said, stepping aside. "Please." Inside, the townhouse was spotless, too clean almost. No photos on the walls, no clutter. Like it was lived in, but not lived in. Marcus sat on the edge of the couch while the woman disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a manila folder. "I'm not who I seem to be on the bus," she began, sitting across from him. "My name is Lauren Pierce. I work with the Department of Justice. I was riding that bus because I needed to see something real, something human. That day I found it." Marcus blinked, confused. "I don't understand. I was preparing for a case that involved someone who risked his life in the name of justice. But then he got shot, by his own, and no one believed he was who he said he was, until it was too late." "Elijah Brooks?" Marcus said slowly. "That FBI agent?" Lauren nodded. "Yes. I've known Elijah for years. We were part of the same internal investigations team years ago. He's not just a colleague. He's a friend, a good man. And what happened to him is something I can't ignore." She slid the folder across the table toward Marcus. "He's awake now, recovering. But things are worse than they look. There are people trying to bury what happened to him. High-ranking people. They want to label it a mistake and move on. They want to protect the system." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were photos. Elijah's badge, his credentials, medical records, screenshots of the incident, legal filings, and a photo of the officer who pulled the trigger. A white man, mid-40s, with a buzz cut and narrow eyes. "Why are you showing me this?" Marcus asked, overwhelmed. "I'm just a kid." Lauren leaned in. "Because sometimes it's not the big names who make the biggest impact. Sometimes it's the small choices, like giving up a seat, that spark a fire. You did something selfless, and you have something I don't. People listen to you without expecting anything. They see you and they see honesty. You're not tangled up in politics. You're not jaded. I need that. But what can I do?" "I want you to meet Elijah." Marcus looked down at the folder again, his mind spinning. "Why me?" Lauren stood up. "Because he asked for you." Marcus looked up, startled. "What?" "When he woke up, the first thing he asked me, after finding out he was alive, was if the boy from the bus had gotten the note. He saw the video. Somehow, even from his hospital bed, he knew." Marcus's heart pounded. There was something bigger happening here, something he didn't understand yet, something that scared him, but also something that pulled him forward. He didn't have answers, just questions. Why him? Why now? What did Elijah want? What did Lauren really want? He left the townhouse with the folder tucked under his arm, unsure of what came next. As he walked home, the world felt different, like something had shifted beneath his feet. People passed him on the street like normal, but he noticed every glance, every whispered conversation, every squad car that rolled slowly past, and he couldn't help but think, who else knew he had the folder? Who else was watching him now? Because if someone really wanted to silence Elijah's truth, would they come for Marcus next? The note had started something, but what exactly had he just stepped into? He didn't know it yet, but the story was only beginning. Marcus barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that officer's face, the one in the photo inside the folder. His name was Officer Daryl Knox, and according to the documents, he claimed he feared for his life when Elijah Brooks reached for his ID. But Elijah hadn't been reaching for a weapon. He'd been reaching for his FBI badge. And still, the bullet hit him in the shoulder, tearing through muscle and nearly grazing his lung. And when backup arrived, they didn't try to save him. They cuffed him while he bled on the pavement. Marcus kept replaying that part over and over in his head. How do you shoot someone with federal credentials and not stop to check who they are? How do you not help them when they're gasping for air? He needed answers, but who could he trust? He didn't tell Miss Etta everything, just that someone from the DOJ had talked to him. She didn't press too hard. She could sense there was more he wasn't saying, but she reminded him to be careful. "Sometimes the truth is heavier than the lie, baby," she said, touching his cheek. "And dangerous people don't like when someone carries that weight." The next morning, Marcus headed to the hospital. Lauren had arranged everything. A security officer buzzed him in after checking his ID twice. Room 407. He could hear the soft beeping of machines before. He even turned the corner. Elijah Brooks looked older than he did in the photos. His face was pale, tired, but his eyes, sharp, alive. "You must be Marcus," Elijah said, his voice hoarse but steady. Marcus stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed. "Yes, sir. I got your note." Elijah smiled slightly. "Didn't know if you'd come, but something told me you would." "I don't understand why I'm here," Marcus admitted. "You gave up your seat," Elijah said simply. "That told me everything I needed to know." Elijah reached over to the tray beside him and pulled out a small leather notebook, flipping to a page covered in scribbled notes and names. "They're covering this up," he said. "They've already reassigned the officers. Internal Affairs is stalling the investigation. The precinct filed the report with altered timestamps. The body cam footage, gone. And the press? Quiet. Real quiet." Marcus swallowed. "Why would they go that far?" "Because this wasn't a mistake," Elijah said flatly. "They didn't just shoot a man. They shot a federal agent. And if the public finds out what really happened, trust in law enforcement takes a hit. That scares the people at the top. They'll do anything to keep it from surfacing." Marcus felt a chill. "So what do we do?" "You're going to help me tell the story," Elijah said. Marcus frowned. "Me?" "Yes. You're not part of the system. You're not tied to the DOJ, not on anyone's payroll. You have something they don't expect. Truth and visibility. That video of you on the bus? It's everywhere. People are talking about you. They trust you. If you speak up, they'll listen." Marcus's head spun. He was just a kid from the East Side. He'd never imagined himself in the middle of something this big. But then something happened that shifted everything again. The next morning, as he walked to school, a black SUV with tinted windows cruised slowly behind him. Too slow. When he stopped, it stopped. He turned around, trying to get a look at the driver, but the window stayed up. Then, it drove off without a word. Later that day, while waiting for his grandmother at the pharmacy, he noticed a man across the street, dressed in plain clothes, pretending to scroll on his phone. But his eyes were locked on Marcus. When Marcus moved, so did the man. Paranoia settled in deep. Were they watching him already? Meanwhile, Lauren was digging. She kept Marcus, updated through encrypted messages, sharing names, dates, and patterns. Officer Daryl Knox had a history. 3 previous complaints for excessive force, all dismissed. One of the complainants, a young black teacher named Andre Willis, had gone missing 6 months later. No official connection. But Lauren was convinced. There was a web, and Elijah's shooting was just the most recent thread. Marcus found himself pulled deeper into the story. At school, he started recording things he saw. A hallway cop detaining a kid just for running late. A teacher calling security over a student with his hoodie up. Small things, but they added up. It was the same sickness. People with power making assumptions based on color, fear, and control. Then came the anonymous text. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." No number. No name. He showed it to Lauren. She didn't flinch. "They know you're connected now," she said. "But that means they're nervous." Marcus sat in silence for a moment. "What if they come after my grandma?" "We'll protect her," Lauren said. "We've already placed surveillance around your building." "You mean they're watching? Us too?" "They're watching everyone, Marcus. The question is, who's watching them?" Meanwhile, Elijah was recovering faster than expected. But he wasn't safe. 2 nights in a row, someone tried to access his hospital floor without clearance. Nurses reported seeing unfamiliar faces. The hospital upped security, but Lauren knew it was just a matter of time before someone tried something bolder. They needed a plan. Fast, Lauren proposed a meeting, off-grid. Not in the townhouse, not in the hospital. A neutral place. She chose an old community center downtown, closed since the pandemic. It had no working cameras, no alarms, just a dusty room and thick walls. Marcus arrived early. He waited by the back door, heart pounding, ears straining for any sound. Lauren came in first, followed by a man he didn't recognize. Then Elijah. Elijah looked stronger, still thin, but standing upright, cane in hand. "I had to see you again," Elijah said, "before everything moves forward." "What's happening?" Marcus asked. "I'm going public," Elijah said, "but not through the press, through you." Marcus's eyes widened. "I'll give you everything," Elijah said. "Names, documents, recordings. You'll read it in your own words, on your terms. It'll come from someone real." I don't know if I can do that." "You already are," Lauren said gently. "You're already in this." Before Marcus could answer, a loud noise echoed outside. A door creaking open, heavy footsteps. They froze. Someone was here. Lauren motioned for silence. She crept toward the entrance, hand resting near her pocket. The tension hung thick in the air. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. Outside, a shadow moved past the frosted glass. Whoever it was, they weren't supposed to be there, and they weren't alone. Marcus didn't dare breathe too loud. The footsteps outside the door grew slower, heavier. Whoever it was, they were listening. Lauren signaled Elijah to step back, away from the line of sight, while Marcus flattened himself against the wall. The walls of the old community center groaned softly in the silence, the kind of silence that pressed on your chest and made the smallest sound feel like an explosion. Another footstep, then a low, muffled voice. Two of them. Close. Close enough to be right on the other side of the door. They weren't whispering, they didn't need to, they weren't hiding. They were confident, like people who knew no one would dare interfere with whatever they came to do. Elijah leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "If they get in, run. Don't wait for us." "I'm not leaving you," Marcus whispered back, but his voice trembled. Lauren pulled out her phone. No signal. She cursed under her breath and pulled something else from her coat. A slim radio. "This is Agent Lauren Reyes," she said quietly into the mic. "Urgent. Code Blue. Southside Community Center. We have unverified hostiles on site." She waited for a response, static, then finally a voice crackled through. "Back up en route. Key 12 minutes. 12 minutes. It felt like a lifetime." The doorknob twitched. Marcus's heart nearly stopped. One of the men was trying it, testing to see if it was locked. And it was. But for how long? Lauren motioned for everyone to move to the back hallway. They crept silently, keeping close to the shadows. The community center wasn't big, but it had storage rooms and a rear exit, if they could reach it without being seen. Behind them, a loud bang. The front door burst open. They were in. Elijah winced as he moved, pain flickering in his face. He still wasn't fully healed, and his cane tapped the floor with every step louder than they wanted. Marcus reached out to help, supporting his weight as they turned a corner into the dim hallway. More footsteps, fast, determined. Then voices. "She's here," one said. "Get the files, grab the kid too." Marcus froze. They were after him now. Not just Elijah. Not just Lauren. Him. They reached the back storage room, only to find the exit door sealed shut from the outside. Lauren swore again. "They knew we'd come here." Elijah looked around, eyes darting across the room. "We can't stay, they'll corner us." Suddenly they heard a crash. Wood splintering. Someone had kicked through one of the old office doors. Lauren turned to Marcus. "Do you still have your phone?" He nodded and handed it to her. She opened the Notes app, typed something quickly, and handed it back. "If we don't make it out, send this to the contact labeled Echo 1. It's everything we've gathered. Don't trust anyone else." Marcus looked at the screen. Dozens of names, locations, dates. It was all there. Evidence that could blow the case wide open. It wasn't just about one shooting anymore. It was about a pattern, one that had been buried for years, suppressed files, supposed random stops that weren't random, all connected to the same officers, same precinct, same silence. Bang. Another crash. They were closer. Lauren turned off the light and motioned everyone to stay low. A sliver of light glowed from under the door. Shadows moved outside. One of them stopped right in front. The handle turned. Marcus held his breath. Suddenly, a loud shout from the other end of the building, then a gunshot. Not toward them, somewhere else in the building. It was followed by more shouting. Orders. Confusion. Lauren's radio buzzed again. Team inbound. 5 seconds. Relief swept over her face, but she kept it guarded. Help's here, but don't relax yet. Moments later, boots thundered down the hallway. Flashlights pierced the darkness. Tactical voices, firm, controlled, echoed through the building. FBI, drop your weapons. More scuffling. Then silence. Lauren finally opened the door. Federal agents in black vests were sweeping the hall. One of them nodded at her. There. In custody. 2 men, unmarked car, no IDs. We're running prints now. Elijah let out a breath. His knees nearly buckled. Marcus helped him to a chair. I think I've had enough drama for 1 week, Elijah said, trying to joke, but the tension was still thick. Lauren didn't smile. She turned to Marcus. They were going to disappear us, she said. If they had made it through that door, it wouldn't have been a warning. It would have been the end. Marcus looked down at the phone in his hand. The message Lauren had typed stared back at him. You said I should tell the story, he said slowly. But what if I'm not ready? Elijah met his eyes. No one ever is. Outside, flashing lights filled the night. More agents arrived. A perimeter was set. The air buzzed with radios and urgency. But Marcus felt none of it. All he could feel was the weight in his chest. The truth he now carried. The responsibility. Because this wasn't just about a seat on a bus anymore. This was about something much bigger. A truth so powerful that people were willing to silence it with force, and Marcus was at the center of it now, holding the match over the powder keg. He had a choice: expose the system, or become its next casualty.